Alonso's dramatic 3-run homer in the 9th inning. And that will be what we'll lead off with today in our Hitting with Holly podcast here with Todd Hollandsworth here on Man on Second. But before we bring in Todd Hollandsworth, for the channel, last night we went past, keep in mind I relaunched this in February, 2.1 million views since February. So we topped that. So I was excited about that. So everyone, please like, subscribe what we're building here. In this episode, we're going to talk about the playoffs and hang around because about halfway through, very popular element now to the show. We're breaking down Todd Hollandsworth's giving his expertise on a lot of these high school kids, either pitchers or hitters. We got a couple of hitters from American Heritage that we're going to talk about their swings later on in the show. One of them, Jordan Rich, who's a potential draftable player. The other is a left-handed hitting first baseman outfielder, Zack Wilson, who's he's uncommitted, and we're going to try to help him get a college opportunity. But before we bring the kids in, let's bring in the great Todd Hollandsworth. Holly, welcome, man, and this is fun times.
Well, yes, Joe. Listen, congratulations to you. You're doing a fantastic job. I remember when you and I talked about this about a year ago. Diving into South Florida baseball and diving into these kids that are some of them uncommitted, some of them looking for opportunities. Joe, I knew where your heart was at the moment in time. And I told you, I said, I'd do anything I could to help you because I believe in the purity of your mind and your thought and everything. Your integrity was all there. You just wanted to help these kids. I know those numbers mean something to everybody, right? We talk about how many times we get viewed and all the stuff, following along. Honestly, everybody, we're telling you, we're speaking from our hearts here. We do this. Joe and I would do this if nobody was watching, if it was just he and I sitting in a room. We love talking baseball. We love talking kids down here, and we have a lot of fun doing it. We're thrilled that you're enjoying it as well, and we're going to keep bringing it to you as long as we can and have fun doing it. So, yeah, Joe, wow. How about MLB, boy? Isn't it amazing? I always tell you about the key ingredients, right, to playoff baseball, and it's interesting. And just this 1 week alone, we've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, and look, hat tip to Major League Baseball. They get a lot of criticism for the six teams in each league making the playoffs, 12 out of 30. Is it, watered down? Are there some, mediocre baseball? Well, look what happened. We could start in the American League, and I'll be honest, I have nothing against the Detroit Tigers. I like the Detroit Tigers, but Joe Espada is a friend of mine. I was at least hoping the Astros could get around in, but credit to the Tigers and what they were able to do. And Holly, they kind of made that late September surge, kind of came out of nowhere and overtook Minnesota. Then flip it to the National League. I think the Mets were 7 out going into September for the final wild card. They, of course, get in, basically in a 3-way tie with the Braves and Arizona, and due to tiebreakers, Arizona's out. The Mets and Braves in. And guess who's advancing when it was looking like it was about to end? The New York Mets. And we were kind of, before we hit the record button, Holly, kind of fill people in what you're saying, because, these are two examples, Detroit and New York, about when did they get hot and what does that mean for the month of October?
Right. As a former Major League player, as a former champion, as somebody who's been there, who's been to the World Series, who's seen how this all plays out, who's been on the other end of near 100 loss seasons, how all of this kind of happens. And, you do your best as a former player and as a broadcaster, former broadcaster, to kind of express these things to people. And, I pour my emotion into it and my heart into it, trying to capture that moment. And it's so much easier when the game just gives you the evidence, when the game explains itself to anybody who's paying close enough attention to understand why we love this game so much, why kids love this game so much, and why I still believe that baseball is America's pastime. I know that maybe it's fallen down in the eyes of people. We certainly know where football's place is, but this is it. This is what we're looking for. And what Joe was referring to, as far as what I said to him right off the top, I said, it's so amazing, Joe. We get to the month of September, and it's really why April through, August matters. It's setting yourself up for it. And when you're in a position, sometimes, unfortunately, as a team, having been there, you're playing from behind. You're trying to get to the postseason. And I talk about this a lot, where your team is playing playoff games against teams that aren't other playoff teams in the month of September. Like, they can't lose. It doesn't matter who they play that day. They could play the worst team in baseball, but they can't lose that day. They have to win that day. So it becomes a playoff game. It becomes a playoff game in the minds of the players and maybe nobody else. But the reality is, in that, you start to develop confidence. You start to develop, teamsmanship, gamesmanship, like all of the things that matter in your clubhouse, that oneness that you're looking for, that one heartbeat. I mean, there's all the cliches that you can throw out, the things that we're constantly searching for in the game of baseball and what you want your team ultimately to be. But when you see it and it kind of organically starts to produce itself, this is the baseball that you see when you get to the postseason. You have teams that people are just generally excited. Oh, listen, my team got in. They fought all the way to the end and they made it in, but they kind of limped in, or maybe they didn't get there and they weren't playing the great base. Look at the winners this week, Joe. Look at the winners. All of these teams had to play September with their hair on fire, as we say, right? I mean, it was like they couldn't give up games. I mean, this is really what it came down to. And the one thing that I learned very specifically, and not myself, more of my team and in a team that wins a championship, is the idea that you have multiple heroes throughout the clubhouse, multiple heroes on your team. You just may not know who it's going to be that day. It's never, very rarely in a championship team, one guy that's just going to carry you all the way through the postseason. It doesn't happen that way very often. And I think, like with the Mets, you mentioned the Mets last night. I got to be honest, when it happened, Alonso hits the ball. I'm like, I really wasn't surprised, because the Mets possess that momentum right now. You go back to Monday and they're playing a doubleheader and they're down and they're trying to get in and they've got to come up with a win, and they rally. They put this huge rally up and they're running and they score all these runs late and they end up winning the ball game. They end up getting in. They celebrate. And here we are watching it again. We just did this a few days ago, guys. Here we are doing it again. What happened? What went up? Confidence went up. That mindset that my arm's tired, but it's not really. I mean, I'm not going to say it out loud, and I'm certainly not taking a day off. But, we'll play 20 innings today if we got to find a way to get a win, and we will find a way to get a win. And that's what you're seeing right now. That's the great joy of this game. What we've always asked ourselves is that in a 162 game season, can we find more ways to generate this? But it's very hard because it's such a very long season, and you really can't manage your team that way, and you certainly can't place those expectations on a team for that marathon that you're running, which is the season. But what you're seeing now is that you're just throwing it all out there. You don't care about your numbers. You don't care about all you care about is winning and just finding a way to win right now.
Holly, I'm going to kind of break down Alonso's, I think it was the 8th and then the 9th inning for him, because this is, I find, fascinating. And it comes down to, obviously, execution. It comes down to redemption. The Brewers hit the 2 homers, and the place explodes. And it's seeming like that second homer may have been enough, because now one swing doesn't necessarily beat you. You need some other things to fall in place. It's a 2-run lead for Milwaukee. Right. But what happens then? You get Diaz is on the mound. The Mets closer is in there earlier than the 9th, because they're trying to put out the fire, because the Brewers are looking to add on. And with 2 outs, there's a foul ball hit. And Alonso, you could tell, even from TV, was struggling to find it. He was getting close to the wall with the fans. And I don't think fans are necessarily heckling him or whatever. But what happens? He drops the ball. And it's an embarrassing moment for him, because now innings extended life. The place is even louder. Alonso's feeling terrible. Diaz, they're playing his trumpet music song and mocking him, basically trying to rattle him. But Diaz, instead of giving up a hit that would have made it 3 or potentially 4 or 5 if he gives up a homer and maybe just demoralizes the Mets, gets the strikeout and picks his teammate up. Okay, so now Alonso would have been the GOAT, right? Had that inning blown up, he would have been, probably leaves the Mets via free agency, and people would be saying, he dropped the ball. Last at bat, he could have struck out there, and the next guy could have made out, and the Mets could have lost too. But he had a little conversation after Nimmo's hit. I guess Lindor, great first at bat, drawing the walk. Great, grinding that out. I think it was down either 0-1 or 1-2 at some point, but worked that, got on base. Nimmo with 1 out, gets the single, puts runners on the corner. And Alonso's talking to Mendoza in the dugout, at the dugout step before he steps up to bat. And I'm thinking, like, probably Met fans are thinking, well, first of all, he can do it. It's not, it's kind of, that's the guy you want up with one swing to give you the lead. But secondly, you're thinking, this could be it. If he gets out and they lose, this is going to be his last at bat. Talk about that, the error, and how the mind goes from that to winning a game with a hit.
Well, the easy answer is and of course, me, Joe, about a million things flood my mind, because as a former player that had any kind of career, me or anybody else, we've all been here. We've all been in this moment. We've all made that mistake. We've all forgotten how many outs there were in the outfield and started to run off the field before the inning was over. Just speaking to myself right there, sliding that in there. Yeah, we've all been in that moment, Joe. It's just, what ends up happening is, Somebody told me very early in my career, kind of the formula for success in Major League Baseball. And it has nothing to do with your ability, has nothing to do with how far you can hit a ball, on-base percentages, or anything else. Just real simple. And it's called managing failure. And as a hitter, specifically as a hitter, not as a pitcher as much. But you start to understand that as you start to play this game and you start to search out success. And you start to realize that the success in baseball for most hitters, even our game's best. I was telling my son the other day, Aaron Judge is going to win the American League MVP. Did you see the last game he had of the season this year? 0 for 5 with 5 Ks. I mean, that is this game. That's what this game ultimately becomes. And some level is managing failure and managing the emotions that come with it. That is the most difficult thing about this game. Because, Joe, you set it up so well. Everything that goes into that moment, Alonso, he's had the success. He's had the homers. He's had the moments. He's had the walk-off. All of those things. And we love to go to the success, and that's what our minds want to remember. We don't want to remember the failure. And I know that we as players do have a very good ability of eliminating that failure rather quickly from our mind. And I think we really saw that last night. And that was what was so exciting to me, is that in those moments, you have to control your emotions, never too high and never too low. And that's why, I've kind of flip-flopped on this mindset that I've had, because I've said at times throughout my career, I wished I played with maybe some more emotion, or at least I showed that emotion. And that's what I wanted. The emotion was real. I certainly was feeling it. Big moments for me, woo, through the roof, right? Bad moments, you don't want anybody to see you. You're like, wow, take your eyes off of me right now. I just really screwed up, and I really just failed on a big league field in front of 40,000 people. Those emotions are running through your mind. I mean, you're doing everything in your power to get rid of them, but you got to extinguish them as quickly as possible and move on to the next moment. The great thing about baseball is that there's always another moment, but you won't win the next moment if you're still dwelling on the last moment, no matter what that last moment was. Now, we can take the successes and carry them through, because they fill us with confidence. They fill us with focus. They fill us with, I can do this again. I just did it. But on the flip side of that is, I just screwed up. I just dropped the ball. I just struck out 3 times. That can also carry itself forward. So you have to manage that emotion. And the great thing about baseball is that emotion shows up every day. And it really, really does. And what we got to see last night, locking into a guy who's had this incredible career so far. He's I think by most Mets fans and most people who know baseball know that, like, okay, Pete had a decent year, but not a great year, right? This wasn't his year, like the year that he's had. He's had a few of the years already, but this wasn't the one. And of course, he's going into free agency, and you're thinking of all of this. But he stepped into that moment last night, and what made me so proud and so excited and so happy for him was that he contained it. He contained the emotions. He contained the focus and the determination, and just went out there and did his job. And what that ended up being was him having probably the biggest moment of his Mets career to date. And here it was, with everything that we just added up, some again, not a bad year, but not a typical Pete Alonso year. From that to the moment that just happened, where it was like, okay, everybody, you feel 45, 50,000 people beating down on you. You feel it. I mean, you literally feel it. You're not just feeling the emotion on the inside. You're feeling it. The hair on your arms, feeling it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're feeling the heaviness of everything that's going on in that moment. The momentum and the emotion has gone against you. But the Mets collectively have now built in this resilience that they now have that makes them in some ways immune to anything and everything that's going on around them, because all they're trying to do is find a way to win the moment. And when you win the moment, things like last night happen.
They got to sign him, right? I mean, it wasn't last night kind of, if you're going, I mean, who knows how the World Series or the rest of the playoffs are going to go. But they're two first basemen that are free agents that I feel.
I love it.
It's like they got to sign him. I mean, and yes, it's easy for me to after the fact,
right?
But he showed what he meant to that team, and you could go get another first baseman, you could get another power hitter,
right?
But does that power hitter and I'm going to mention two players: Christian Walker in Arizona,
right,
who fits the mold there. He's part of what they're building there. He went to the World Series last year with Arizona. They fell, agonizingly short of the playoffs this year, but he means a lot defensively. He's a 30 homer, 100 RBI kind of guy who probably is. Yes, he could go sign elsewhere, but I'm not sure it's going to work as well. So for Arizona, he makes a lot of sense. And because for one, right now, yes, maybe they get Alonso. But secondly, you get yourself almost in a Freddie Freeman-like situation if you're the Mets, if Alonso leaves.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, I love it, Joe. I mean, you described fandom for me right there. I mean, you unintentionally did it, but it is like if I were to talk to any Mets fans, and there's lots of them in South Florida, I see them all the time. But that's a Mets fan right there. Oh, it's so funny because I think the conversation and I think if we're all honest with ourselves, he doesn't come through in that moment. It's maybe a different.
Then he's done.
It's a very different conversation, which I think is just amazing because here we are summing up a man's, career to this point, and all of a sudden it gets defined by a moment of success, but the readiness and everything that he put into that moment and him coming through. One thing you learn about this sport is that you can't define players by moments. You can't. I mean, we all are so proud of them, and they certainly, moments like that thrust our players and our stars into better positions. The moments when you come through, and one thing that you start to understand is that when you do come through in those moments, fans remember those moments. But when you don't come through, people don't really remember it the same way because obviously there's no success attached to it. And so there is something there as far as coming through in those moments that allows a player to, release that emotion and that tension. I've always believed it. I said it to people all the time. I went to the playoffs a number of times throughout my career. I think I went 3 times in my career. I felt more freedom in the playoffs than I felt during the regular season because it was truly, to me, the definition of team baseball. And I think that that to me was always freeing. I enjoyed team baseball. Team baseball to me is way more fun. I'm not worried about, my numbers. I'm just trying to do my job at the highest level. And that's really what it would ultimately come down to. And I think, looking at Pete and everything that he's gone throughout his career and the way that he's managed New York, which is, by the way, no easy thing to do. I say this with 100% conviction. Most of Major League Baseball, the players themselves, cannot handle New York. Myself included. I don't know how I would handle that. I mean, it's intense pressure on a daily basis, constant critique, constant paper. I mean, I remember when we used to get to New York, we'd, because the papers are different, right, than they used to be back in the day. They open like a book, and most other papers are folded, right? You fold them in the middle, and so you open them up. But I always were like, okay, because this is New York, because New York does it different, and this is the pressure, and this is what comes along with this. And boy, you got to be really, really emotionally strong, mentally tough to be able to compete in New York consistently, deal with the good and deal with the bad. So my hat's off to Pete. Joe, I agree with you 100%. I'm not steering clear of your question. When you live in the moment, like we just did last night with Pete, I think that you got to say to yourself, I'd love to see Pete back in a Mets uniform. It makes all the sense to me because I struggle to see him in somebody else's uniform, especially when somebody's had so much success doing it. I say this all the time. When players find success in a place, there's key to that. Sometimes it's the dimension of the ballpark. It's the way they see the baseball. It's the way that they, they feel about it in their heart. And that all matters. I know this day and age where we just assume that every player, and a lot of them do it, run to the highest bidder, which is obvious. You see a lot of players' careers get steered in different directions because they may get more money, but they're now going to a pitcher's park, and now all of a sudden the ball that they've been hitting out doesn't get out as consistently, and the numbers go down, and now all of a sudden they're taking all this heat. But you know what? They got paid. I get it, but I don't know. I guess I was always just kind of like, in my mind, I wanted the success. Like I wanted to, to back it up and go out there and play at a high level, and wanted to feel good about my performance on a daily basis. So places where I felt good, those were the places that I kept in the back of my mind. Like, okay, I could play here. This is good. Other places where, maybe I didn't hit so well, or I didn't see the ball as well, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm never going to be interested in playing here, no matter how much they offer, because I don't feel like the success would naturally come. But I think for Pete, truly last night was a defining moment for him. He came through in that moment. He put everything behind him. We'll never talk about the dropped ball again. We'll only talk about the home run, and that's the great joy of the game of baseball. And Pete earned it. I mean, he came through in the moment when the team needed him the most, and he'll always be remembered for that.
Yeah, and obviously, there's still a couple more rounds, and he could be the hero or the GOAT in that. But
hey, listen, there's no more rounds if he doesn't come through last night. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's true. But, you touched on it, and you've mentioned a few times on the show and on this podcast for the past couple of months, is comfort. The comfort level, the feeling of, hey, like you say, whether he likes where he lives in New York, maybe the ride to work isn't such a bad thing for him. He could, whatever his process is,
right?
Playing for the Mets is part of that process. Mm-hmm. And I think also you're probably knowing you're ready to win. Obviously, you're winning because you're in New York. You're there winning. You're in the second round now. But you also know the organization is going to commit to that. It's not going to be, in which we've run into here in Miami, they'll sign a couple of free agents, but the second something goes wrong, everyone's gone. They're making no further commitment to bring players in, and the organizational direction pivots that way. And I don't want to make this about the Marlins. I want to kind of stay on the theme. I'm using them as an example, but at least for a player. So talk about that aspect of the whole evaluation when you're a free agent to make that call when you are a high-profile all-star in the biggest city in the country.
Well, you want that level of commitment. I know that we don't talk about it nearly as much as we did in years past. Of course, Derek Jeter is the first one that comes to most everybody's mind. Are we ever going to see, players play 20 years in one uniform? The level of commitment. It's everything that you're describing there, where the fit is perfect. You put your foot, you wear a size 12 and you just put a size 12 on your foot. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is just, it's going to work through the highs and the lows. The fans trust you. You trust the fans. It's not always going to be perfect, but there's the level of respect. There's the level of, we know this guy's game, and we know that this is a guy that we can build around. We can win with him, and we want him. And when you feel that as a player, it matters. When you don't feel it as a player, it matters as well. And the thing that typically happens, and I think in our sports, because we have become a little bit more cutthroat with how we deal with the players, that level of trust just doesn't. It's not there the same way that it was. When I got drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1991, just kind of speaking from experience, thought I'd be a Dodger forever. I mean, I really did. I didn't think that, this was like, a part journey here, part journey there. It's funny because when you do it, you think, well, if I would have thought that through at that moment in time, even at the ripe old age of 17, just turned 18, that your journey is going to take you to 8 different cities. You're going to play for 8 different organizations in the next 15 years. You could almost set your mind up to think different things, like you've already notched down loyalty, and so I don't want to extinguish that. And I certainly don't want to put it out there, but the one thing that definitely works against loyalty is money and highest bidder and go chase it if you want. But the reality to me is that when you find the place that works and you find the place that makes the sense and you find the level of commitment from the organization, that they have it and you have it. I mean, it just feels like, boy, this is really going to work out. He stays healthy. He's going to play well. He's already played well for us. And that's what you ultimately want to see. But I think what tends to happen to a lot of players is that there's these moments where they've been that player that they expect, or maybe they have some downwards. I guess the first person that comes to mind is like Paul Goldschmidt, like what Paul Goldschmidt's going through, right? Paul Goldschmidt's had a Hall of Fame career. This guy did it for the Diamondbacks. He's done it for the Cardinals. Now, I know he's a little bit of an older player, but I just thought it was interesting that here we were, a day after the season, and this guy, I know he's had some bumps along the way, but I also know who this guy is, what his level of character, integrity, what he means to the team, what he means to the clubhouse, what he means to his teammates, but just how quickly, like, it was almost like, Paul Goldschmidt's not coming back. You know what I mean? Like it was already out there in 24 hours. And I thought, okay, see, that to me is kind of, and this isn't me calling the Cardinals out by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's universal. I think it's over. More teams think this way than don't, which is, in the moment, if the player's not defining himself with the best of the best, then we don't consider always bringing him back. And I think that they move on from that. And they're like, okay, well, we've got to change. We got to find better answers. And that's where we go. And so to your point and to your question, that's kind of where this ultimately goes, because listen, you look at the Baseball Reference page. I always thought it was so interesting. Like, they have this one stat at the very bottom, I think, of the main page when you look at a player profile. And they show the averages of 162 game season. They take all their numbers and they put it in the one average. If this guy was to play a 162 game season, this is what his numbers would look like. And I think the point of that statistic in that line is to show what this player typically is over a full season. Now, not everybody plays 162 games every year, but it just kind of gives you a snapshot of who that player was. As the player who lives in the body and goes out there and does this, if you're in the position where you say, okay, if I can go out and do that every year, this is exactly what should happen. But the reality is there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. And this is the average of who you are. So you can't always be defined in the moment. I always thought it was so interesting. I used to say this all the time when I was working at MLB Network. Give me the guys who are 1 year away from free agency. You know why I used to say that? Because you're going to get the best year. They know everything's on the line. The other 5 years, they matter because they've established the resume. But the paycheck is going to be defined by what this guy goes out and does in that year. If you've had 5 great years and you don't come through in that 6th year, it's going to cost you in your pocket. It's just the way that it works. You are a decent player, a good player. Call you a good player for 5 years, and then you go out and have that great year in your walk year. You're going to get paid more than probably worth, and that's generally how this goes. But loyalty to me is everything. And it's one thing that I feel like has lessened over the course of time, certainly in the last 10 years in the sport. It's become much more businesslike and a lot less personal. And that's it's unfortunate. I know it exists. It just doesn't exist everywhere like I felt like it used to.
Yeah. And hopefully some teams start bringing it back. We're going to segue over to our hitting breakdown, but great points by Todd Hollandsworth on the Pete Alonso situation. I will note that with Terry Francona going to Cincinnati, I kind of like that. It's kind of a little bit like the Rangers last year, bringing Bruce Bochy. You're getting that the human side. Buster Posey taking over from a completely analytical former president of baseball ops at Farhan Zaidi. So you have the player, and the first thing Buster Posey is noting is wanting a general manager with more of a scouting mindset. So maybe the human side, and that's certainly what we're fighting for, at least I am, as we move forward. But this is something that we're going to be loyal to, is to the development of young players and doing our part in their advancement using Todd Hollandsworth's expertise and breaking down some of these high school players right here. And I kept this part in because this guy can run like the wind, but I had to stop it because my phone, Holly, can't get the chain link out of the way. So I had to do this. This is Jordan Rich, my friends, everyone listening, American Heritage center fielder, left-handed hitter, senior, uncommitted, potential draft pick. Was a really good defensive back as well. But you see him here where he really hits his stride. Holly will break his swing down. But as you can tell, super athletic, runs the ball down. He basically, Holly, at this level, he gets on first. It's a triple because he could steal second and third without throws. He's that much of a difference maker. Let's get your opinion on Jordan Rich's swing and what you think.
Well, I like what I see in Jordan. This is great. Now, remember, this is left on left. His point of contact's out in front of home plate. but you can tell right away that his mindset is using the middle of the field and going the other way, staying in, keeping that front shoulder in against a lefty. And that's what you want to see. This is a real good swing. So again, you can kind of envision lefty on lefty. Look at that. I mean, the front foot staying in there, pointing right back at the pitcher. I mean, there is a lot of things to like here. Strong front side, staying behind the baseball. His head. Look at his eyes. We talk about this a lot in Major League Baseball. Your eyes down the barrel, which is the transfer from pitch recognition, tracking it into your bat path, coming to meet the baseball, and lining your eyes up. I mean, his eye, honestly, if you were to look it up online, this is exactly what you're looking for. I mean, his eyes are shooting straight down the barrel. He's watching all the way through the point of contact. There's no pulling off. Good weight transfer to the front side, which I love to see. But again, maintaining the balance, staying on the back side. Look at his back left. We talk about this an awful lot. Sometimes, how you finish high on your backside, which means you're really rotating your hips well, meaning you're getting through the baseball. That back leg, that left leg, his foot, you can see it. It's off the ground. He's up on his toe, which means he's got tremendous weight transfer. He's got quick hips, and he's using them. He doesn't have dead legs, so to speak. He's not just using his top half to generate power. He's using the strength that's in his legs, that's in his body. But I got to tell you, Joe, as pretty as this young man's swing is, and as much as I like what I saw, the thing that I love the most was that the minute he makes contact, he's thinking triple out of the box. He's looked, he knows where the ball's coming off the bat, and you see it. Look, he's one step out of the box right here. His head is already he's beelining for first base. He's kicking it into gear, and he's thinking 3 right away. And that's
and look how quick that bat's on the ground. Very simple, no waste, just easy drop of it. And you're right, this ball was to Holly picked it up, but it's not surprising. This was a hit to left center.
Yeah.
So the short, everything was that. I'm thinking double, but just kind of because that's where a double is. He's thinking triple,
yes,
but I forgot that was Jordan Rich, who's a speedster.
Sure. Yeah, it's a pretty swing. He's picked it up again. Here's what I love. He's coaching himself right here. And that's what you want to see. Kids at home, I'll give you a little base running, because Jordan just does such a really nice job. I talk about it an awful lot. But, again, we've kind of gotten into this point. I see it in high school an awful lot. We certainly see it in the advanced levels where, players are doing everything that they're told. This is your at-bat, and this is your ball, and you're the one running the bases. There's nothing going on around you. You are in complete control. You do not, let me repeat, you do not need a third base coach. This is not a third base coach. Tell me what to do. This is you're running the bases. You're in the minute. The ball's in front of you. Now, I'm not talking about like you see the right field line right here. Now, if the ball gets behind you, of course, you've got to pick up your third base coach as you're coming around. So it would be essentially the same ball, right? Nobody's on base. Nobody's coming around the score. He's not worried about other base runners. This is him understanding his speed, his lines, where he's at, and he knows he's going to get himself to third base. And that's what I love to see. You don't see for 1 second him glance over at the third base coach and slow down thinking, tell me to come to third. No, you don't need that. You decide for yourself. You know what's going on in front of you. You see where the center fielder and the left fielder are. You see where the cutoff man is. You see what he's doing, how far out he is. All of those things you should be processing yourself as you come out of the box. Great read by him. He picks up the baseball. He's already around first base. Good line into second. Doesn't misstep around second base. Great stride, and it's his ball. It's his triple. Like I said, we see it all the time, right? Kid hits a ball like this. He gets halfway around first base. The next thing I know, I see him staring down the third base coach like, tell me what to do. Absolutely not. It's your call. It's your read, and he does a great job of this. Of course, he's an older player, older high school player. I believe he's a senior, correct, right?
He's a senior now, yeah.
He's a senior. So he's played, he's got game experience, but he understands it. He was taught well. And that's what I certainly would give credit to the people who have taught him, certainly how to run the bases. He understands that. And that's what you want to see right here. He makes the contact, his swing, he's establishing what's going to happen next, and he's going to be responsible for what comes next. It's not on the third base coach to decide whether you come to third base or not. He's like, I'm coming to third base. Third base coach would be standing there just like this with his hands in the air, showing everybody, no, I don't want you coming over here. But it's your read. It's your read because you're the one who hit the baseball. You're the one, all the action's in front of you. He doesn't have to change his head to see what else is going on. The only time you really have to worry about that as a hitter runner after you've hit the ball and you're running around the box is when the ball gets behind you. So you have to trust eyes that are in front of you, not behind you, obviously. But he sees everything and he makes that decision. Great job. This is a great swing. When you sent me this yesterday, I'm like, Jordan, this is cake. This is this is an easy one because he does not really do anything wrong about his swing. The only thing I would just maybe tweak, just keep that barrel tight. You know what I mean? You know, I saw loose
Let's
hands.
get back to the swing. What do you mean by that?
Little bit of, when you watch his hands, it's a little loose. There's a little bit of drop here, right there. See, there's a little compression, which is all right. He's in a great hitting position, but I've always been a firm believer in maintaining your bat angles. He lowers his just a smidge to get into his zone, but that's what ultimately you want to see. This ball's up. You can see where the pitch is, see where the catcher's glove is. So this ball's up. Those balls, to me, I always thought this. I was a high ball hitter. So I loved high ball because I saw it well. I knew it was going to stay up, and I stayed on top of it. The ball was supposed to be down. This was a mistake.
So is it, Holly, it's right past here? I'm starting.
Yeah, go ahead. Move it one more click. Watch the catcher's glove. He just a little tiny little tweak. And it's just because his hands are so loose. He just kind of, I think that's really.
Yeah, let me see if I can get it.
But again, so you see where his hands are behind his ear? See right there? They drop just a smidge. Not a big deal. This is more of a conversation that maybe you would have with Jordan, like, hey, Jordan, you want to stay a little bit higher? Because to me, what we practice as big leaguers are clean lines and clean bat path. And so when there's just a tweak of a little bit of a drop, you've changed that. It doesn't mean that your bat angle isn't always going to ultimately be the same. It changes based on the pitch that's coming. I mean, your bat angle is going to be different on a ball at your knees than it is going to be a ball at your letters. And this ball's at his letters. But he's in a very, very good hitting position. He does everything technically right through his point of contact, which I love to see. Little weight transfer there, but watch how this the front knee's bent, and watch how it tightens up. It's going to straighten up a little bit right there. See, he transfers over. He's keeping his weight back. It's a great swing, head down. I love everything about it, especially lefty on lefty. Boy, that's never easy to do. I hated it. I didn't love it. I had to work at it an awful lot, but he does it really, really well. For a 17, 18-year-old.
Yeah, and I believe, because I pretty much tried with him especially, as you notice, I got over in his open side. And then the next hitter, it was Dylan Dubovik, who he broke down his pitch. He had to run back to the other side because he's right-handed hitter. And then Zack Wilson hits, and he's left-handed. We're going to get to him in a minute. So I'm running back and forth. So the parents used to see me fly around the field over there.
Job, Joe. You do an amazing job.
But I believe it was at least the second, maybe the third pitch he saw, because he took the first pitch, left on lefty. He was facing a pitcher who was pretty much fastball changeup type of kid. And so he was kind of sizing him up, and he got that pitch elevated, and obviously he didn't miss it. And guess what? When Dylan was up, pitchers now, you got a fast guy in third. What are you worried about? Don't bounce a ball or whatever. And Jordan walks home on a wild pitch like 2 pitches after this. So It's already, and you could hear one of the players saying, man, he just did that all by himself. But again, so point being, he didn't ambush a first pitch. He showed patience. And I exchanged texts with Jordan yesterday, and I noted, I said, dude, I told him once, I said, you got to give me a bunt single, because I know he does that, because the scouts want to see you fly from home to first in this angle. They basically could do their reading off my video. But 2 is part of his game. And he laughed. He said he would. But I also told him, I said, I was as impressed with one of his walks, because he, like third at bat, he kind of spit on some close pitches, and he didn't do anything to force a swing. You know what I mean? He knows who he is. He's a top of the order type of guy. He doesn't need to make up for, hey, it's fall ball, I'm just going to swing the bat to swing the bat. He stayed with an approach and drew a walk, which obviously putting him on base is a threat. So the walk for him is of high value. But like I said, I liked his mindset that he wasn't going to try to force anything, take the walk if they're giving it to him.
Right. Well, I mean, his greatest asset, again, I don't know Jordan all that well, just again, seeing a little bit of video that you've seen me, but we know that he can run, and there is tremendous value in that. And certainly understanding what your skill set is and maximizing that is very, very important. And it sounds like he did that an awful lot yesterday or the day before in his approach. And that's the thing. Don't get away from your strengths, kids. I know that we work on our weaknesses all the time. You hear it constantly. We got to work on getting better at the things that we don't always do well, so that we can make ourselves more complete baseball players. But the truth of that also is, don't ever give away your strengths. Your strengths are who got you to the point that you're at, whether you're 15 years old or 18 years old or 22 years old. The strengths are what made you a baseball player and got you there. You got to work on those and maintain those as much as you do working on, the things that aren't maybe the strongest part of your game.
Great advice. Let's bring in Mr. Zack Wilson, first baseman. Let's rewind this to the. This is a home run he hits. Let me play it through. Let me set up Zack. Zack, he's looking for opportunity. Could go the JUCO route. Not the biggest, guy in the world, but he has some power in there. Really good swing. He's a very disciplined hitter. Sometimes we talk with him a lot about swinging the bat, not taking pitches that right down the middle, because he's so looking to for the perfect pitch that he sometimes misses swinging. So we're trying to get him a little more aggressive, but let's play it through, and you can tell us what you see in Holly.
Again, a lot to like. Lefty matchup. Again, another ball elevated. That's the one thing. Lefties, all lefties out there. I'm a lefty. I speak to this. I'm speaking from experience. Doing your best to hit sliders low and away. I mean, that's me telling you, you got to work on the pitch that's the toughest for us to hit and the one that we see the most from a lefty on lefty matchup. But when you get the mistake, you don't miss it. And
what do you say?
When guys make mistakes up in the zone, watch the catcher's glove. You see where he's setting up? Watch where his glove goes. See how much higher it reached? This is a ball that's up. Balls that are up are easy to identify. This is a fun conversation for me because I am just such a firm believer in bat path. And I know that there's been so much conversation, particularly over the last, 5 to 10 years, about guys who drop and drive and getting the ball over the wall and doing what we've got to do to hit more home runs while not worrying about strikeouts or on base percentage or any of this other stuff. Let's be perfectly honest here. Drop and drive really does not work on that ball that he just hit over the fence. You've got to be flat to the ball. You've got to be in the zone. Look at the barrel. You're doing a great job right there, Joe, showing it. I mean, this young man. Now, his weight is a little bit farther forward. Remember, we were just watching Jordan where there was he had a strong front side. Different weight transfer here. He does put his weight over his front leg just a little bit more. You can see how the leg is, his front leg's a little bit more hidden, right? On Jordan, you could see it. Like everything was on his backside. He was rotating. But look, again, high backside, his left leg, his left foot, he's up on his toe. But you see the difference between the two players, right? The one has a wider stance. This one has a shorter stance. He's doing a lot of the same things that Jordan does, except he stands a little bit more upright. And that's what you see in the difference. I'm more like this right here. This is what I was. That would kind of be a little bit more like what I would look like, because I didn't have the ability to really try to spread my legs out too far, because as soon as I did that, my top half would start to collapse over my front side, and I didn't want that. So I needed to stay a little bit more narrow so that I could keep my weight back on my backside. And so that's what I was constantly always working towards. And I think you see it here. There's probably a foot and a half of space between his front foot and his back foot, where in Jordan, you probably have 2, maybe 2.5 feet, because he's got a wider stance and a different approach. Yet we're still looking at a similar result, right? Taking an elevated pitch and squaring it up because they've got a flat bat coming through the zone. I love to see this. This is a great swing, again, on a mistake. Mistakes are up in the zone. That's where I used to talk about this all the time. I remember different guys, different pitchers. When you talk about the bottom of a strike zone, you can talk about any pitch there is that any pitcher that can throw. You can talk about splitties. You can talk about sliders. You can talk about changeups. But when you miss up, like we see these two swings, these are mistake pitches, and these pitches should be crushed. These are pitches that you cannot miss.
Not to interrupt, but you almost see, I know it's a side view. You almost can see where he's loaded and ready to go. Like his eyes are wide open. Yes. Like he liked what he was seeing coming in. He identified this fast.
Yes, he did. And that's my point, Joe. When we talk about elevated pitches or pitches that miss at the top of the strike zone, there's generally one. I mean, if you're missing with changeups up, you're done. So as a pitcher, like the reason I'm excusing it and just explaining it, because I know somebody's gonna be out there. Well, no, we see mistake pitches at the top of the strike zone all the time. You really don't. The farther along you advance, as you get into the big leagues, The pitches that hang out at the top of the strike zone are typically, now again, we've got a few guys who drop curveballs in up there, but don't get me wrong, guys who throw 12 to 6 and have good spin rate. But my point is, when you see mistakes up here, it's usually a fastball. And so that's where my trust always would lie in my mind, was that as soon as I saw the ball up, I already knew my pitch recognition had almost been completed and it had been defined. This is a fastball up. So now all I have to do is take my hands to the ball, level off. And these are the easiest balls to elevate because they're already elevated in the strike zone. You don't have to work to get it up into the air. And what do we see? This is an elevated pitch. It's at his belt, maybe his belly button, just a little bit higher than that. He gets through the swing level. And what's he do? He drives it over the wall. He'd probably tell you himself, without even speaking to him, that this feels pretty easy. This is almost like batting practice. Everything clicked. His front foot's down early. Good weight transfer, but he still stays on his backside. That strong front leg, which I always love to see. Clears his hips, clears his hands, gets through. Look how level, Joe, his bat is now. The ball's already off the bat. Look, see, this is the finish of his swing right there. So what does that tell you? He's still in the strike zone. If you were to back him up one click from here, you'd still see a level bat, just in a different place. And so here, see, he's finishing his swing. He's entering the hitting zone. Look how long he is. There's so much more room for error when you come through the strike zone level. And what I mean by that is coming through like this. You know what I mean? You can just see it in his swing. So if he's a little bit early, there's a little bit more room for error. Grace, as I used to say all the time, you're going to find more hits there. Those are the balls that are off the end of the bat. You took a really, really good swing, but you hit it off the end of the bat and it turns into a base hit. Sometimes you get jammed a little bit. You end up going the other way. The guy's throwing really, really hard, but you take this same swing and it turns into a soft line drive over the shortstop's head. But again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get hits. That's the whole name of the game here. So to me, it was always about room for error. I didn't want to be in the strike zone this long. I didn't want to start in a spot, get to my sweet spot, and then leave my sweet spot. So if this is my sweet spot, I wanted my sweet spot to be like, my camera's not even helping me, but I wanted it to be this long. I wanted it to be as long as my arms could be, meaning there's a lot more room for error there. This was a no-doubter home run, and he probably would tell you, honestly.
Oh, it went. You see the scoreboard over there in that light pole there? It was just to the center field side of the scoreboard and 3/4 up the scoreboard and past that light pole when he hit it. And it's funny, you noted at the end of the bat, because I did have his swing, later at bat, similar type of approach, and he basically hit it. I thought he got a line drive to right, but it got caught by the second baseman. And when I kind of broke it down, he caught that pitch right near the end of the bat. Yeah. He just missed the barrel. And had he done that, it would have been a clear single and maybe hits the gap for a double. Right. But he had a couple of really good swings in that game. This pitch, obviously, he was able to elevate and really drive. But the other one would have been, because at first you're like off the bat, you're like, oh, that should be a hit. And then it just kind of died, and the second baseman didn't even have to make that difficult of a play on it.
Yeah, it's a real pretty swing. I love it. Keeps his hands high, back elbow up. I'm a very big fan of the back elbow up because that's a trigger, that's a drive. You drive into the strike zone. You really kind of create force. So he's doing things right, and I love to see it. And again, real good approach, real simple. And I'm, like I said, I'm very certain of this. He'd probably tell you, boy, that felt easy. Every now and again you run into a few of these swings that felt easy, and that's just where everything clicks right. You catch it just right, the ball jumps off the bat, and you're like, boy, I wish I could do that every time. It just tells you how hard this game is and how hard it is to hit, but you got to see it right there. And good swings right there. Just sometimes you just make sense. You're right on time, your front foot's down early, you find the barrel, and it's like, boy, I didn't even, you don't even feel like you had to work hard to generate power to hit it over the wall. It's almost just easy. It comes off the barrel the right way, and it's just pure. The ball goes really far, and you're like, almost like you surprise yourself, and you realize the more you do this is what I'm searching for. I want more pitches here so I can do this. This wasn't hard. That's what I know he's thinking right now.
Yeah, and that's Zack Wilson, American Heritage. Just a quick background on both Jordan Rich and Zack Wilson, both now seniors. 2 years ago, when they were sophomores, Heritage won state, and they came back and beat Tampa Jesuit in that championship game 2 years ago, and in extra innings, it was Zach Wilson who had like a huge extra base hit, drove in like a couple. I think they had taken the lead in extras, and he hit like a 3-run double or something like that. That made it like a 4-run lead to kind of seal the game, if memory serves. And unfortunately for Jordan Rich, last year, he was a football player. He suffered a shoulder injury against Cardinal Gibbons in the state football playoffs in 2023, and it cost him his entire 2024 baseball season. He ended up being activated to do a couple of pinch hits in the state semis, and not pinch hit, pinch run. Excuse me. He wasn't clear to really swing the bat, but he had a pinch run and scored a key run in the state semifinals, and even pinch ran in the championship game. But Jordan now, he played football, baseball. He's given up football, both uncommitted. Again, Jordan could be drafted. I think both could be headed to JUCO as they kind of continue their path. And I'll just kind of talk about just before we get out of here, just that level. I mean, these are high level down here, as our audience knows. This is the cream of the crop. As good as our players are, there's not necessarily guarantees at the next level. We're trying to provide as many and open as many doors. If JUCO is an avenue, what's kind of your thoughts on that?
Oh, I love JUCO baseball. I do. I feel like it's where it's at right now. I know that we feel like we have to be, or kids have to be, in the most recognizable places as far as being seen or being noticed, or I need to go Division I. Just all the things that you hear guys say. When I'm around the field all the time and you hear it, just the chatter, you have to go to the best place that's going to serve you well, where the opportunity really presents itself. One thing that I'm certain of is this. My kids know I have this saying. It's a silly saying. I'm going to say it out loud. But it's true. And I believe it, and I stand by it. And I've always believed this. If you can play, you can play, and they're going to find you. And that's really what it comes down to. I know that, you need to be getting higher levels of competition. Well, that's kind of where you start to dive into the baseball IQ and the mind behind the player, as far as players being able to make adjustments. But when you're in high school, really, to me, what I'm looking for is skill set, talent, work ethic, guys who are really to work at their trade, work at who they want to be, look at where they're going, and not always defining the journey. That's the thing that I feel like sometimes we have to get away from, is this idea that the only way that I'm going to get to the big leagues is if I go from a high profile high school to a high profile SEC school to a high, to going in the first 3 rounds, and then somebody's going to give me my opportunity, and boom, I'm there. Like, okay, right. That's the dream course of action. It doesn't always work that way. And in fact, I can't put numbers behind it because I don't know, but I just, you experience young men, guys who are going through this, guys who are living out their dreams. But the more that you start to realize is that is really, I understand how important that path is. And certainly it is the one that we most identify with now on the other side, as a former player, as a former broadcaster, as somebody who's watched the journey. I get it. You're going to get more TV time that way. You're going to get more recognition. But more times than that doesn't really work that way. JUCO baseball is fantastic, because really what ends up happening in JUCO baseball is typically you're in a position where your whole world just becomes baseball. To me, it's kind of like the minor leagues before the minor leagues, if that makes any sense. I hope it does.
Yeah.
But you're grinding. You're working on your game. You're working every day. I have a son who's doing JUCO baseball right now, and he is absolutely in the absolute best place he could possibly be, both mentally, physically, in his preparation before his games. His enthusiasm for the sport, his love for the game has grown, and he was at a Division I program last year, and the experience was very different. I mean, he didn't enjoy it. He didn't like it. There's this idea of, a higher level, the way that he would describe it best is that the game is being played in a pure way, in the way that he's always seen it in the JUCO level, than what he sees at a little bit of a higher level. Now, this isn't, him not having the talent to play Division I baseball. He does. But the point is that he's in a position where he's becoming a better baseball player. And that's the key to the journey. Is your game getting better? Are you working on yourself? Do you have the time to do it and apply everything that you're learning each and every day to your game? And for me right now, and I think that you talk to most guys who are deep in baseball, who know the circuit and know all this stuff that's going on around it, they will tell you that there's a lot of talented Major League Baseball players that are coming out of JUCOs, because they know that in JUCO, it's a little bit more about the school, or excuse me, it's a little bit more about your game, a little bit less about the school, your academics and all that other stuff. And it's a lot more about baseball. I say to people all the time, I don't have one college hour, Joe. You know what I mean? I didn't go there for a second. I have a degree in baseball. That's kind of what I going to the minor leagues is all about, is that's where you're picking up your degree. You're learning anything and everything that you can about the sport that you love so much. And you're looking to apply it to your game with the hopes and dreams that you're going to get to work for a Fortune 500 company, which is called MLB. That's what you want to do. That's the idea, and that's the journey. And I think that JUCO kind of presents itself in that way right now, where I feel like some of the bigger places, I get it, man. You know, if it works, it works. And certainly we identify with it. You know, most of your games are on the SEC network, or, you know, wherever you are at that big school. And that's only going to help you. But what I'm saying is that is not 100% certain, and it's not 100% the only way that it works.
Yeah, well said. And we'll kind of wrap it up on that note. And again, this is about opportunity and what's the best. And we are providing as many options to people. And I know a lot of our audience, especially if you're not from South Florida, or your kids in other parts of the country, are trying to figure out, where to go. JUCO could be the route as well. But we will kind of wrap it up. Holly, a lot of fun, my friend. This is good. Yeah. We'll do this again next week with a couple of new players to break down as well.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting times. This is the best time. This is the purest time for baseball. You guys at home, I say this constantly to my guys, put your phones down, turn the video games off, and watch some baseball. Football's on now too, but you got to tap in to playoff baseball. This is what the Major League season's all about. This is the most exciting time of year. This is the time where you're going to learn things, you're going to see things, and you're going to see baseball in its purest element from the big leaguers. They're not worried about their numbers any longer. They're going out there to win a championship. They're going out there to win a World Series. And that's when you want to see guys play that, I talk about all the time. It's hard to do because baseball is a selfish game, because you got to worry about yourself. But this is when it becomes selfless by definition, and this is the most fun. You'll see sometimes 3 and 4 hitters dropping down bunts to get guys into scoring position late in the game. You just never know what you might see, and now's the time to watch and time to pay attention to what baseball really is all about, because this is the time of year where the conversation is generated the most.
No doubt. And it's been fun. And if the next rounds, the division series rounds, are as exciting as the wild card rounds, the MLB playoffs will be fun, and we'll be here to talk about it and much, much more. Again, Holly, we'll do this again next week, my friend. A lot of fun here on the Hitting with Holly. Reminder, please like, subscribe, comment. Let's hear what's on your minds. Let's get your input as we're growing this. But again, we top 2,100,000 on the channel since February. And keep in mind, we're pretty much a Broward County high school location, but we're going to grow this into a very viable media outlet. And with that, I greatly thank you. Holly thanks you. And tell everyone, we will see you all in the next video.